Hi there, I'm Katie Cat. Thanks for joining me in Delaney's Well for this week's AstroTarot. We have a lot of planetary influences that are showing up in our reading for the week, and the first one of which is Saturn. Saturn governs the card of Cosmos, also known as the world, and we see this person who is holding onto a world, and they're surrounded by these 22 laurel leaves and these 4 figures that are positioned in each of the corners. Now, those 4 symbols in each of the corners are actually associated with each of the fixed signs, being Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Saturn is the planet that is associated with Father Time. It's a planet of responsibility. It calls us to task, and it has an orbit of roughly around 29 years. So around the time that we are 29 years old, we usually have some big shift in our lives because of wherever Saturn is transiting when it is returning to its original position of wherever we were born. It's called a Saturn return. Now, whenever Saturn is anchored on any of the angles of that position that are of 90-degree placements, it also can create some big shift in our lives. Now, it often creates a big shift in our lives in the places that are the most stable or unmoving, hence the fixed signs. And these fixed signs are all noted in this particular card. So where is Saturn right now? Saturn is actually in the sign of Pisces, and so it is bringing a sense of responsibility to the area of Pisces in our chart. Pisces is usually associated with some level of escapism, isolation, deep spirituality. It's associated with the fish that can go to the deepest depths of the ocean and then bring that whatever it has learned by way of experience up to the heavens. It's the last sign of the zodiac before it returns back to Aries again. So there's this energetic of dissolution, like breaking things down before they can come together again. So it's a very interesting sign in that it's a mutable water sign. It's where we see, actually right now, because this is the first day of Pisces, where you start to see all the ice of fixed water that happened in Scorpio start to melt and nourish the earth again so that new things can be born when it is the season of Aries. So these astrological or zodiac signs are also very telling of what's going on by way of the seasons, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. And so we have this energy that's happening right now with Saturn where it's bringing a lesson of responsibility to the area of Pisces. And it's doing this wherever Pisces sits in your chart. It's calling us to task. For some of us, it may be making things kind of difficult. It's putting our nose in some kind of action or behavior where we've used it as a way of escape. And it's telling us, you know, if we want to get to the island on the other side of the ocean, we have to set our sails. We have to make sure that we have everything packed that we need to make that journey. We can't just wish it all to happen. And so many of us are going through some kind of calling to task right now, hence where Saturn is in the chart. The challenge that we are looking at this week is within the realm of the Five of Pentacles, somewhere that we've had some kind of loss or hardship in something that we really valued, whether it was a material value by way of monetary things, something we physically valued, or even something that we emotionally valued. There's some sense of loss in this card. And yet behind these 2 figures that look like they've gone through some kind of hardship, there's this stained glass window with 5 pentacles in it, telling us that there's something of value that we can gather through this experience. And that is the challenge that we are being called to look at. Now, the way through the challenge showed up by way of the Temperance, another major arcana. This one in particular is associated with the planet of Jupiter. What's interesting is that Jupiter and Saturn are currently positioned at roughly 60 degrees apart in our sky. So that makes them have a sextile relationship. And much like the hexagon that we see in a beehive, sextiles allow us to create structure. And while Saturn is a planet that can be associated with restriction and responsibility, Jupiter governs the sign of Pisces and is this expansive, kind of spiritual energy. It brings a level of help to a situation. And Jupiter is currently sitting in Taurus. So it is expanding upon our values and getting us to look at that. While at the same time, Uranus has been in the sign of Taurus for a number of years, creating a lot of change and upheaval, making us to really get to the foundation of what we value. Now, the thing about Jupiter and about temperance, which is so interesting, is that there is this hint to alchemy going on in this card. We see that they're pouring from one goblet to the other, and one is painted red and one is colored blue. And so it's this combination of using these two opposing forces to create something new, to create some kind of distillation or some kind of refinement or assimilation of some experience so that we can actually see something out into the future, hence these symbols that are growing in complexity within the card. Now, the ultimate outcome, which is showing up here, is a combination of 5 cards. The first of which is the Two of Wands, which is, telling of our call to the wild nature, where we feel we need to go and what we need to do. And yet there is this wand that is also bolted behind us on the wall behind us, which is telling that there's something that we still need to take care of before we can actually have the freedom and the capacity to go out on this journey. That's further clarified by the Knight of Wands, which is telling us it's time to act, and it's time to act now, because we see that the horse's hooves are up in the air. It's rearing to go. And yet we have to ask ourselves, well, where are we going? Where is your ship directed to? Where is your aim out in the vast sea? Because that's what Saturn is asking us to look at, because Pisces governs the ocean. The ocean is vast. This world is vast. Where do you want to put your energy and effort? Where are you being called to move toward directionally? That is further clarified by the Seven of Cups. Now, this is emotional illusions of happiness. So it makes us really look at where we've had conditioning around where to put our energy and what would bring us happiness versus what we've emotionally and just in reality experienced, right? Because we see there's this great big cloud and there's these 7 cups in the cloud, all filled with something different that perhaps you know someone that would love to have one of those cups. Any one of them. There's one filled with riches. There's one that has a castle. There's one that has a partner. There's one that has a little demon. There's one that has a victorious bay laurel wreath. There's all of these things that we were guided or conditioned to believe would bring us happiness. And yet, have they? Will they? Well, this is a number 7 card. It's asking us to learn through our experiences around what we have emotionally experienced and what we've actually gained from it, and if it is true, if it has actually panned out the way that it said it would, right? So like if you went to drink from a glass of water and it tasted like mud, that didn't pan out the way that you wanted it to. Or if you went to drink a glass of wine and it tasted like vinegar, that didn't pan out the way that you wanted to. Versus if you went to, drink a glass of herbal tea and it really was delicious herbal tea, then you'd want to go back to that cup because it brought you some kind of nourishment. Did the things that you attained in going after these cups bring you the sense of happiness that you were led to believe that it would? It's asking us that because maybe you don't want to run fully forward toward one of those things if you know that every time you run to the wine, it brings you vinegar or hardship or, whatever it is. And so it brings us to the next and final 2 cards. One of which is the Knight of Pentacles. The Knight of Pentacles is a very, very different energy to the Knight of Wands. The Knight of Wands is ready to go. It is full of itself. It's full of fire. It's ready to just burn the trail. Whereas the Knight of Pentacles has all 4 feet on the ground. It moves purposefully. It lets its values guide it. And so what have we gathered from our experiences and our emotional experiences of this life so far? What do we really value? What has brought us true nourishment? It's time for us to move purposely toward that. And I think Saturn is reminding us of that in whatever way this energy is showing up in your life. It's showing up in all of our lives in some way, depending on the house that you have Pisces sitting in. That's where Saturn is. And it is going to be even more poignant if it's at an angular house in your chart, if it's in the 1st or the 4th or the 7th or the 10th houses in your natal chart, or if it's in opposition to one of your planetary placements, or in, square to one of your planetary placements. Because these mathematical relationships with their placements are like anchors that help us direct our ship, sometimes through hardship and sometimes through grace. And so the following card to this Knight of Pentacles, which is asking us to move purposely, is the Judgment card. So we have 3 major arcanas that have shown up in our reading today, and 2 knights, and a cup, and a pentacle, and a wand. And then we have this final card, the Judgment card. Now, the Judgment card is associated with the planet of Pluto. Pluto just moved into Aquarius, and it will be in the sign of Aquarius for the next 19 years or so. It will be there until 2043, which is a very long time because Pluto has an orbit of 248 years. It sits in any sign from anywhere from 12 to 20 years. It's quite a bit of time, depending on if it's on its elliptical axis or not. Now, what's interesting about that is we also have a lot of other planets moving through there. We have Mars and Venus. We're at close conjunction. They'll be in conjunction in a couple of days. We also have Mercury sitting through Aquarius. And Aquarius is a fixed sign. It's fixed air sign. It's that power of knowing and the stability of knowing and the certainty of knowing. And Saturn is affecting this. Saturn actually governs Aquarius, but it's doing its work right now over in Pisces. So it's helping us figure out where exactly we want to go to once we set sail in that ocean so that we get to where we want to go. And Pluto right now is transforming that. It's transforming our long-range hopes and dreams, and it's doing it by calling us out of the dark. We see this angel playing a trumpet that's calling these 3 figures out of these 3 black boxes, which, reminds people of death. And so there's this awakening that's happening through this process right now that we're all going through. And while it may seem hard and it may be difficult, the challenge is exactly that. How do we find through hardship that it actually is aligning us with the path that we are meant to go on? How do we see through the hardship so that we can actually realign ourselves and look up and ask for grace and ask for guidance and follow that? Because we are quite literally being called to transform the way that we are in this life and to live in a different way, because Pluto will be creating transformation in the area of Aquarius for the next 20 years. It's going to be creating transformation in our sense of knowing and what we conceive of, what we're certain of, because it is the planet of transformation. And by transformation, I mean, you can't go back once you go there, right? Like the caterpillar becomes goo before it becomes the butterfly. And the acorn breaks through its shell before it becomes the oak tree. But the oak tree can't go back to being an acorn. It can only fruit and create more acorns. And the butterfly can't go back to being a caterpillar, right? It can just go on to mate and then create more caterpillars. So there's this life cycle that we're all going through right now, but we're all in a very big shift because we have these energetics happening in these fixed signs, particularly Aquarius and Taurus right now. And we're going to see even bigger changes come the end of April when Uranus and Jupiter come into a major conjunction in Taurus. And wherever it is in your chart, that's where it's going to create this big shift. It's like, it's like sometimes I see it like gears that are on this lock, and it's like this multi-level lock, and they each have a different weight. And when they align in a certain way, they open up things that we wouldn't have had the access to had they not aligned in that way. And so we're experiencing that right now. And so I do encourage you that if you are going through some kind of difficulty, to try to find the grace in it. Because sometimes when things drop out of our lives, it's so that we can realign with our path, because they were distracting us or they were stealing our energy and our time. Even if we willingly gave it to it, it was showing up as something other than what we had intended it to be, right? Vinegar instead of wine, or disappointment instead of wine, or hardship instead of fun, or whatever it has shown up like for you. If you want some help in looking at your chart and where all these planets are sitting in your chart, feel free to reach out and we will coordinate some time. I can also do a pre-recorded reading and send that to you as well. Send you a good wish. I hope you are well and taking care of yourselves. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.